We are in Parashat Mishpatim, and the parasha right after we got the Torah. And the first thing that we start dealing with is about slaves. And kind of ironic, because we just finished being slaves. We went out of Egypt. So again, we're talking about slaves. So very, very sadly, we are also slaves. We are just called modern slaves. And not much of a difference. And I heard somebody said something very smart not too long ago. We have everything, but we have nothing. We have so much of everything that we don't have nothing. And we don't have nothing because it doesn't matter who the person is, to find a free moment in your day, it's almost impossible. We're so busy with so many things that to find a half an hour to sit and read a book, or to be with your child, or to do something, it's almost impossible. Not too long ago, there's a certain individual that I know, and we were supposed to meet to something, and I said, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't, at this time I can't. I said, what do you do all day long? I mean, you don't have a job, you're older, you don't have kids. I mean, how come you don't have time? I mean, it's not that you're running now a multi-million-dollar company. What are you so busy with? Oh, I have to go here, I have to go there, I have to do this, I have to do that. We're constantly so busy that to do basic things, it's almost impossible. And this can be explained as that we have no freedom. If you take your day, even if you're on vacation, not on vacation, but vacation, you don't do anything. And then when you're on vacation, you want to be able to do as much as possible. But even if you take an average individual, the day is so full with so many tasks and so many things that it brings us to a point that we barely have any freedom, any free time. And the point that is sad, that you see an average individual, and to make a free time to do something, it's literally almost impossible. Which brings us to the point that we're not free. And this comes to teach us something so important, that even in our generation, I still have to go out of Egypt. I still have to go out of this point of a slave. And to translate it to our words is to say you have to know how to utilize your time the right way. Most people I see that are wasting their time on nonsense. 2 hours on Facebook, 2 hours here, 2 hours there. How many times a day you check your WhatsApp? Why do you need to check it so many times per day? People are like hooked on all these things, and what happens is the result is that they don't utilize their time the right way. And their time is being messed up, misused. And this is what I want to talk about today, that we just left Egypt. We're supposed to be free now, but we're still slaves. And why specifically this week? How come this week it's still talking about slaves? I mean, one would think that we already left Egypt, and that's it, we're free. Now we're going to serve Hashem. But nevertheless, we get the Torah last week, and again, we go a rerun back to slavery. So why specifically this week? Because last week we received the Torah, and the first topic right after giving the Torah, because we finished last week with the giving of the Torah, but this week, the first law is about slavery. If a person will be sold as a slave. So right away we're seeing this point of the slavery. And very sadly, but slavery is not something that was only 3,000, 4,000 years ago. 150 years ago there were slaves. There were slaves everywhere. And the slaves, if you look like just in America, it's not that they were voluntarily going there. They went and they kidnapped people from their land, brought them to a different land, and made them slaves. This is not something that is so far away from us. It could be 2, 3, 4 generations that were also had slavery. And when we're looking in this parasha, the beginning of the parasha is talking about a Jewish slave. Interestingly, in the beginning of the parasha, it's talking about a Jewish slave, calling it Eved Ivri. And in the end of the parasha, it's talking about a non-Jewish slave, calling it a Eved Knaani, a Canaanite slave. But it's talking about two types of slaves. We'll call it in our terms a Jewish slave and a non-Jewish slave. And the Torah doesn't give you information for no reason. And when you're reading about this, okay, what does it have to do with me? What is the Torah telling me about a law that was 3,000 years ago, that if a person didn't have money, he could sell himself to be a slave, or if the court caught him stealing and he didn't have money to pay for the theft and they made him a slave? Okay, that's a prehistoric rule. Yeah, what does it have to do with me? Why is that should interest me? Now, if the Torah already took the time to put it in the text, must be that there's some type of reason here. And not only reason, some message behind why the Torah is talking to me. The first topic, you would expect after giving the Torah to talk about some lofty things. Maybe to talk about Shema Yisrael, learning Torah, Yom Kippur, some big things. You're giving me now, talking to me about slaves. But nevertheless, we want to know first of all why and what's so important about it. And not only that, it's very interestingly how it's defining what it means, the slave. Because technically we can't be slaves. Not even technically, even practically, we're not allowed to be slaves. It says in the book of Vayikra, Hashem says, Ki haytem li avadim. You're going to be slaves to me, Hashem says. You can't be a slave to somebody else. And if you're looking at the job description of the Jewish slave, it wasn't slavery, it was a job. Slave is when you're working from morning to night. Slavery in hard jobs. If you're looking at the description of what it means, Eved Ivri, it's a job. It's a basic, it's a regular job. And believe it or not, the social status of the slave would be exactly as the master. And the halakha says that if the master sleeps on a comfortable bed, then the slave has to sleep on the same exact bed. If the master is eating a certain type of food, the slave has to eat the exact same type of food. So really it wasn't even slavery. It was a job, what it's referring to in this parasha. And basically how it worked is that if a person would sell himself to slavery, or the court would appoint him, then he would be an employee for 6 years. That's it. That's what the law says. 6 years you work, and in the 7th year you go free. But this is definitely not slavery. It's called slave. We're going to find out soon why the Torah is calling it a slave. But nevertheless, this was it's a regular job. You're just being hired to do a certain job. Now, what are the two options how a person can become this slave? One of them, like I said, that he sells himself. The person doesn't have money. In our generation, you file for bankruptcy. Then you became a slave. You say, okay, I don't have money. I have to sell myself. Or that the person would get caught stealing, and the court would say, okay, now you become a slave. If you can't pay the bill or what you stole, become a slave. Now, really, when you're thinking about it, if you're looking at the details, the one who bought the slave, it's a headache. It's a responsibility now. If you go through all the rules of what the master has to do, it's a headache. Because you have to pay benefits, social security, health insurance, presents, for vacation. If he has a wife and kids, you have to support the wife and kids. It's not such a prize to have this slave. So it wasn't such a great thing to buy a slave. But nevertheless, it also was very important that the master knows that he's not allowed to slave the person. He can give him a job, and that's it. He can't slave him. And it was very, very clear that this is not a slave, it's a worker. Now, the parasha starts with the fact that if 6 years pass, then the slave has to leave, has to go, he gets to be free. And if he doesn't want to, if he says, listen, I like my master, I like the house, I got a very nice room here, the food is great, and I don't want to leave. So the master had to take the slave to the doorpost and pierce his ear and putting an earring in his ear. And this was a very derogatory thing. In our generation, it's a nice jewelry, but almost any second man in the world has earrings. But at the time, then it was a very derogatory thing. This, if somebody would be walking in the street with an earring, he would be considered like the very low level individual. But one thing that we need to take from that is that we have to be free. And especially when we're reading the Torah that we went out of Mitzrayim, the Torah is coming and telling me, a Jew has to be free. You can't be a slave to anything. Not necessarily a slave in slavery, but I have to be free. I have to have the mindset that I'm not a slave. Some people up until today, they have the mindset of a slave. And a Jew at the time that would give over or give in to his freedom, that was a very, very derogatory thing. It wasn't it wasn't considered a good thing. Were you giving away your freedom? You become a slave to somebody? And the Rambam explains that the job description of this slave, and again, it's using the word slave, but based on the Torah, the oral Torah, and what Rambam explains also, it wasn't slavery. It was a regular job, and the job had to be defined. You know, the Paro, when he had us as slaves, it was working from morning to night, no hours, no description. You finish one job, now go to the next job. Go to the next job. That's a slave. Here, Rambam explains very clearly, there's a job description. This is your job. This is when you get your tea break. This is when you get your lunch break. This is when you go home. You can't do too much. It can be an excessive work. It has to be a regular job. And needless to say that one could not go over these rules. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning of the parasha, it's talking about a Jewish slave. It's calling it Eved Ivri, which again, it's not the right term, but we're going to explain why it says the word Ivri. And then at the end of the parasha, it's talking about a Canaanite slave, a Eved Knaani. That's a little bit of a different rules. If a person buys Eved Knaani, then he buys him forever. The Eved Knaani doesn't go out for free unless the master wants to let him go. But other than that, if the master buys a Canaanite slave, then he's there forever. And not only that, that also comes with a lot of limitations and a definition of what's the job and so forth, because the Canaanite slave, if he gets the amount to redeem himself, then he can leave. And again, why would a Canaanite slave would be sold? The same idea. He got caught stealing, and the court made him go now and work as a slave. But if somehow he got a loan from a family member, or somehow he got the money and he can pay the money, he can leave. But nevertheless, we're talking here about two types of slaves. Now, when I'm reading the parasha in this generation, I'm saying to myself, what is that going to do with me? Who cares about it right now? You know, in this parasha, it has a lot of important laws. In the middle of the parasha, it gives me a very substantial and basic law that we all follow, is that we can't mix meat and dairy. When the first time we get acquainted with it in this parasha, that I understand, that has to do with me. You're telling me now something about slaves? What is it going to do with me? Well, this is something that has nothing to do with me. Not only that, this is one thing that has nothing to do with me. But more than that, which is more interesting, that's the first law that we're reading about right after giving the Torah. And that raises also another question, like I said before. Wouldn't you want the first law to be about that I have to love Hashem, I have to praise Hashem, maybe give me the laws of some important days like Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, give me some important laws. What are you giving me now? A law of a slave? Doesn't make much sense. And this, of course, begs the question, why is that the first law? Now, you know what's more interesting? Most people, like I mentioned so many times, they read through the parasha, they don't stop for questions. They just read the information. Think of something. The Torah is giving me a law that also had nothing to do at the time that it was given. Because the Torah was given, this last week we got the Torah on Har Sinai. This week we're reading about an Eved Ivri, about the law about a Jewish man that doesn't have money or got caught stealing, and he sells himself as a slave. Now, when was this given? In the desert. That didn't apply to them in the desert. First of all, they're all rich, because after the sea closed up, they went and they picked up all the gems and the jewelry and all the gold that washed into the shore. This is called Bizat Hayam. When they went to the ocean and they took all the thing of all the stuff that was on the carriages of the warriors of Paro, it all washed into the sea, to the shore, and they took it. So first of all, they had money. Second of all, who sells himself to the slave? A person that doesn't have money, or a person that stole? But they got manna every day. They didn't even have money. They didn't need money. Man came down every day. The clothes were washed by the cloud. Everything was served to them. Why would somebody need to steal anything? And why would somebody not have money that he has to sell himself as a slave? So even the 40 years in the desert, it doesn't even apply to them. Why do you give that law right as the first law? Give the law 40 years later. Or like in the book of Dvarim, when Moshe Rabbeinu is concluding the book, he's giving them more laws. Give it 40 years after the end of the desert. So look how many unclear matters we have here. First of all, what does it got to do with me about the slavery? I'm 3,400 years later. We don't have this rule right now. We don't sell people as slaves. What is it got to do with me? More than that, why is that the first law that comes right after the giving of the Torah? Give me a bit different law. And to top all that, even when they got the law, they didn't apply to them. So wouldn't that should make sense that this should be one of the last laws that they're getting? Saying you're about to go into Eretz Israel and there's going to be a chance and in a few years maybe some of you will be sold for slaves. So here let me give you the law. So obviously must be, if this is placed in that place in the Torah, right after the giving the Torah, obviously there's a very deep message behind it that I need to take from that. Besides the fact that I need to constantly be free. If I catch myself in any type of a way that I'm a slave to something, that's already a red light for me to stop. Wait a minute, I can't be a slave to anything. I was born to be free. And if I'm already a slave, I have to be a slave to Hashem, not a slave to anything else. So since we have these powerful questions that are stopping me while I'm reading the text, must be that there's something a little bit more hidden here that I have to find out. Why is the Torah so particular to give these laws right after we're getting the Torah? So, to explain that, first of all, there is a little bit of a mystery with this Parashat Mishpatim. Because, you know, the Torah is not in sequence. It's not really in order, the Torah. I mean, when we're reading in the book of Bereshit, that's already in order. But when you're reading now in Shmot and Vaikra, there's not much of an order in the Torah. There's a mystery. When was this parasha said? Was it really said right after Matan Torah? Like how we read it now in the order? Maybe it was said in a different time. So, we know last week's parasha was Yitro. So we know exactly when it happened. We know exactly when it was Matan Torah. It was Vav in Sivan. We know exactly when it was. And we know when they left Egypt. And we know how long it took them to get to Har Sinai. So we know in Vav Sivan, that's when they got the Torah. That we know. But when was the Parashat Mishpatim said? So we do know that the end of the Parashat Mishpatim was given right after Matan Torah. That we know. But when is the rest of the parasha was given? So there are two opinions. The first opinion was given by the Ramban, and he says the parasha of Mishpatim was given on the day of Matan Torah. The whole show finished. Everybody turned around to go back on his business, and Hashem told Moshe, wait a minute, before you're going, I have a few more rules to tell you. Just stick around when you know everybody going out, like the end of the show, everybody turning around, going out to the exits. And nevertheless, the Ramban says, no, this parasha, this whole parasha, was given to Moshe on the day of Matan Torah. Just when everybody kind of drifted away, then the Kadosh Baruch Hu caught Moshe on the side, told him, I have a few more rules to give you. This is the opinion of the Ramban. But there's another opinion. This is the opinion of Rashi. And he says, no, you know when this parasha was given? It was given to Moshe when he was in Shamayim. Wasn't even given down here. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to the mountain for 40 days, that's when the parasha was given to him. So we know that the end of the parasha of Mishpatim, that we know that was given right after Matan Torah. But in the middle, all the laws that we're reading this week, so again we have one opinion of Ramban that says it was given on the day of Matan Torah. The opinion of Rashi is that it was given to Moshe Rabbeinu when he was up on the mountain, when Moshe Rabbeinu was in the heavens. Now, interestingly, we see that the Kadosh Baruch Hu, if we're going by the opinion of Rashi, that the Kadosh Baruch Hu took the parasha and he moved it to be attached to the parasha of Matan Torah, that it's attached, Mishpatim and Matan Torah and Yitro together. So if we go by the opinion of Rashi, then the Kadosh Baruch Hu moved the entire parasha to be close to Parashat Yitro when we got the Torah. And that's already also going to beg a question. Why? Why would Hashem do such a thing? So there's two ideas, two explanations that kind of explain why this parasha is kind of stuck in between and why all these rules, especially about all the laws of the slaves, are attached to Matan Torah. So one explanation says this parasha was given to teach and to inspire and to educate the master. It has nothing to do with the slave. It's to teach the master. Another idea says, no, this parasha was attached to Matan Torah to teach the slave. So we have two opinions here, two ways of looking at it, and we're going to explain it Bezat Hashem. The first is about the master. The Torah wants to teach the master why and how to treat the slave. So there is a story, and I heard the story in many different versions, so I'm not going to name names and places, we're just going to tell the story. There's a good chance you also heard the story. You know how sometimes there's a story, and the story goes around, everybody tells the story. One says it was happened to that tzaddik, another person says it happened to this tzaddik, one person said it happened in this city. There's always these stories, but nevertheless, there's a story about a certain lady, or a certain woman, lived in some city a few hundred years ago, and unfortunately lost her husband. This was a common thing. It's not like today we have hospitals and it's a little bit more easier to save people's lives. 200 years ago, somebody will get a virus, that's it, gone. So she lost her husband and she had to work and support her own kids. Not wasn't easy, but nevertheless, after a while, it became much more of a burden, and at some point she barely made ends meet. And it got to a point that she couldn't pay her rent. 1 month passed, another month passed, 3 months passed, and the landlord says, Giveret, lady, you're not paying the rent, you're out. She didn't know what to do. Winter's coming, snowing, freezing outside. The landlord is telling her, yeah, I'm going to throw you out. So she decides to go to the rabbi, to the Rav, the rabbi of the Ir, of the city. Goes to the rabbi, crying, weeping, I don't know what to do, I lost my husband, I have to support the kids, I don't have money. I don't know what to do, and now the landlord wants to throw me out of the house. In the winter, it's freezing cold, it's snowing outside, what am I going to do? The rabbi says, you know what? I'm going to go talk to the landlord. And the way it worked in the olden days is very similar like today. There's always would be a few rich people. We call them a gvir, somebody who's rich, and he owns all the properties and he rents it to everybody. Happens to be that her landlord was a Jewish man. The rabbi says, I'm going to go and talk to the landlord myself. Okay. He goes, snowy night, wraps himself up with a coat, goes to the house of the landlord, the gvir, knocks on the door, and the servant opens the door, sees the chief rabbi of the city, calls the master of the house, don't ask, the chief rabbi is here to see you, what an honor. Right away, he invites him in. The rabbi says, no, I'm only here for a few minutes. I don't want to go in, my boots are all dirty, I don't want to make the house dirty. Why don't you come out for a minute? Okay, so the master of the house, goes out and he starts talking. So the chief rabbi of the city starts telling him, we're in Parashat Mishpatim right now, and he starts explaining to him about the parasha. 2 minutes pass, 3 minutes pass, 10 minutes pass, the landlord is already freezing his tuchas off, and he's giving him a drasha about the parasha, gives him pshat, Kabbalah, a little bit of insights. And at some point, it's 20 minutes past, the landlord says, why don't we go in? He said, he said, no, I'm done in a minute, there you go back in. Okay, he finished giving him a whole explanation about the parasha, 20 minutes. And then he says, and by the way, the rabbi says to the landlord, by the way, I really came to talk to you about this lady, Mrs. So-and-so, and she told me you want to throw her out of the house. In the winter, she's a widow, she doesn't have money. I came to talk to you that maybe you can help her out, maybe be a little bit more sensitive, maybe she can stay a few more months. So the landlord says, how about we go in, and we'll sit and talk about it inside. The rabbi tells him, I don't want to talk to you about this inside. I want you to be out here when I'm talking to you about it, because if we're going to talk to you about it next to the heater, you're not going to listen to what I'm saying. Now when you're standing out here, I want you to feel how she would feel if you would throw her out in the middle of the winter and she would be out on the street with her kids. So the landlord got the point. The rabbi took him out for 20 minutes. Let's stand outside for 20 minutes. And you'll imagine, you'll understand how she's going to feel and you want to throw her out to the street. So the rabbi got the point across. So the Torah is coming to tell me, in the first version of the explanation, when the Torah is coming to teach me as a master, the Torah wants me to experience on my own flesh what somebody else experiences. That's how I build sympathy. That's how I build sensitivity to somebody else, is when I feel what they're going through. If I'm looking at you and I'm all warm and comfortable, I don't feel your pain. I can experience your problem. But when I'm in the same place that you are, oh, I remember that. Thank you. I remember, ooh, I also felt the freezing. Now I know how you feel. So the Torah comes and gives me a lesson. Me as a master. And it's not necessarily me, but the Torah says, I want to teach the master that if you get to a point that you do have a slave, don't mistreat that slave. Don't mistreat the individual. And in our terminology, you know, there's a Mishnah that says, Al tadun et chavercha ad shetargia lemekomo. Don't judge your friend till you stand in his place. Very easy to look at a person and to judge a behavior. Look how he's doing this, look how he's doing that. Well, why don't you go to his place, then let's see how you're judging him. So the Torah is coming to teach me a lesson. Don't be so quick to judge other people. Put yourself in the situation of another person, and if you're not going to do it, then I'll do it for you. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, I want you to be sensitive to other people's suffering, to other people's needs. If you don't know how to do it yourself, no problem, I'll do it for you. And you don't want to get to this point. So, the Torah is coming to teach me a very profound lesson, and comes here another part to take from that, is that I'm sure each and every one of you at some point in your life, could be even now, that you have a cleaning lady. Some people don't have the luxury, they clean the house themselves, but when you do have the luxury, you have a cleaning lady. Finally, when you get that good one, it's pretty rare, you don't want to let her go. She already knows where all the cleaning supplies are, she knows your meshugas, how to put things away, where your socks go. Well, finally you get a good worker in your house, you don't want to replace that worker. I remember even many years ago when we lived in America, we also had a cleaning lady, and she was very good. And at some point she came to my wife and she wanted much more money. And my wife was about to send her home. There's a dime a dozen like you. And I told my wife, whoa, she's a good one. Don't let her go so quick. It's worth the extra amount of money. She already knows everything in the house, where everything goes. She's always on time. Usually cleaning ladies, they always call in sick and they can't make it because somebody else is paying them $2 more. Nevertheless, when you have a good worker around your house, you don't want to let go of it so easy. And what happens if I get a slave, that's what the Torah is trying to teach me, and I don't want to give him over. It's a good worker. Why would I want to give a good worker over? Finally, I have a good worker. So comes the Torah and tells me, whoa, you just left Egypt. Don't forget that you just left Egypt. Have mercy on this slave. So the Torah is coming to teach me one lesson as the master, and it teaches me, have mercy on other people. Even if I'm in our generation, 2019, I don't have a slave, but I have workers. I have a worker that comes to clean my house. I have a worker that works for my business or whatever it is. Don't use that worker. You have to have sensitivity to the worker. The Torah is coming to teach me basic behavior between me as a master or as an employer to the employee, or to lehavdil, a slave. What's interesting here is the Torah is calling it a slave. It doesn't say a worker. It says ki tikneh eved ivri, that you will buy a slave. So it is calling it a slave, but interestingly it also adds the word ivri. Ivri is a Hebrew. It's not even an Israelite. Why does it uses the word ivri? Abraham was called ivri. And you know why he was called ivri? Because he passed, he was the other side of the river. Me'ever HaYarden. He was on the other side, so he got the name ivri. Ever means the other side. But the word ivri, after Matan Torah, we don't find the word ivri anymore. Before Matan Torah, we found that term ivri, a Hebrew. I don't even know how you would say that, Hebrewite, but after Matan Torah, we were called Israelites, not ivri. Why is the Torah calling it ivri? It would make more sense to say Eved, Israeli. They didn't have the word Yehudi then, but it would make more sense that the Torah would say Eved Israeli, because we became Bnei Israel. Why are you saying Eved ivri? So, like I said, ivri, the term ivri, we only find it till Matan Torah. After the giving of the Torah, we don't find the word ivri anymore. So, the Rabbeinu Bechayei asks this question: how come the Torah doesn't call it Eved Israeli, an Israelite slave? So there's a book. The book is called Megalei Amukot, the revealing of the depth. This book was written about 400 plus years ago by a rabbi called Natan Neta Shapiro. And this book is an interpretation about the prayer of Moshe Rabbeinu. 252 interpretations and commentary on one prayer of Moshe Rabbeinu. 252 interpretations written by one book. Unbelievable book. Unbelievable depth of knowledge and mysticism. Nevertheless, this book is revealing to us about the question of Rabbeinu Bechayei, who says, why is the Torah referring to the slave as a Eved Ivri? Should it be a Eved Israeli? That makes much more sense. We're after Matan Torah. We're now Bnei Israel. Ata bechartanu mikol ha'amim. That's it. We're Bnei Israel right now. We're the sons of Israel. Why are you calling me a Ivri? Nevertheless, so the Megalei Amukot says that the Torah is coming to teach me that I have to arouse as the master. The master has to arouse mercy. Mercy on the Eved, on the slave. The fact that he sold himself to a slave, or the court found him guilty and they gave you to him as a slave, you still have to arouse a lot of mercy on that individual. Now, what does it mean to arouse mercy? Why would I come full of mercy when you name the slave Ivri? I will arouse mercy because looking at the person. Who cares about the definition? So he comes and says something very, very interesting. He says, remember what happened to the previous slave that we called him Ivri. Do you remember a story that we read a few months ago about a certain individual that was sold to slavery, and he was called Na'ar Ivri, Ivri boy, Hebrew boy? Remember the story? This is when the tribes sold Yosef. They took Yosef and they sold him for money. And they sold him for slavery. And what does it says in the Torah? Na'ar Ivri. A teenager, Na'ar is a teenager, Ivri. It doesn't say Israeli. We weren't Bnei Israel then. So, the Megalei Amukot comes and says, you have to arouse mercy to remember that first slave that we sold then. Remember that story? Don't forget that story of the brothers. They had some jealousy, a little bit of lashon hara, and then they decided to sell him as a slave. So, if you remember, again, the story is saying that Yosef was sold to be a slave, and he was called, again, an Eved Ivri. And what was the result of the fact that Yosef was sold as a slave? You know what was the result? That the entire nation became slaves after that. Yosef was brought down to Mitzrayim. He wasn't voluntarily going there. He didn't go on a kosherika down to Mitzrayim. He was sold as a slave. In handcuffs he went there. But what was the result? That many years later, the entire nation of Israel went to slavery to the same place. So this is the result from selling one little slave, one little boy, Nar Ivri. Look what it did to the entire nation. 210 years of harsh slavery. So as a result of selling Yosef, we all became slaves. Now, how do you rectify that? How do you do a tikkun? When you have mercy on the slave that you got, and you get him for 6 years, after 6 years, let him go. That's it. He worked for you, he did his job, give him good conditions. It's not a slave, you don't torture him, you give him his job and you let him go. Have mercy on him. Basically saying, in other words, that this whole idea of the slave is coming to do a tikkun, a rectification for selling Yosef. And this should arouse in us the mercy and the understanding to remember what happened the first time when we sold somebody as a slave. Okay. Besides being a nice explanation, there's another twist to it. This year we have a leap year, so we're not going to do it this year. But normally, this week, if we wouldn't have a leap year, and this week's Parashat Mishpatim, we would take the Sefer Torah out on Shabbat, we take another Sefer Torah, and we read what's called Parashat Shkalim. This year we have a leap year, we're not going to do it. We're going to do it in a month from now. But if this year would not be a leap year, this coming Shabbat, we will take out 2 Torah scrolls, 2 Sifrei Torah.
Leap year again, 2 Adars?
Yeah, leap year means that we have 2 Adars.
Okay.
If this year would not be a leap year, this coming Shabbat, we would take out 2 Sifrei Torah. One, we would read Parashat Mishpatim, and the last Aliyah, we would read the Parashat, it's called Parashat Shkalim. This year we have a leap year, we're going to do that in a month. And you know when we do that? We do it on the Shabbat before the Rosh Chodesh of Adar. Since this year we'll have Adar Aleph, Adar Bet, so we do it in Rosh Chodesh Adar Bet. But we read a portion that is called Parashat Shkalim. What is this Parashat Shkalim that we read? This is talking about the Machatzit Shekel, that we give half a shekel. This is the place in the Torah, it's called Parashat Shkalim, that everybody is required to give half a shekel. Comes a question here. Why does a Jew give half? Why does the Torah tell me to give half a shekel? Give a shekel. What's the idea behind me giving a half? Okay, so there are many explanations that we always should feel that we are not complete. Hashem is the other half, and many beautiful explanations. But, really, why are we giving half a shekel? Because that's to atone the selling of Yosef. That was such a severe sin that up until today, by the way, we're paying for it. That the brothers sold Yosef. Literally up until today, we are paying the debt of that sin. But this Machatzit shekel, and up until today, we still do the custom of Machatzit shekel. But this Machatzit shekel, half a shekel, Machatzit means half. Shekel is the currency. The giving of the half of a shekel, this is a rectification for the selling of Yosef. That's what the Torah says. Now, why specifically a Machatzit shekel? So it says the brothers sold Yosef for 5 shekels. That was the price. Can you imagine? 5 shekels. Yeah, a cup of coffee. Now, how many brothers were at the pit where they sold him? 10 brothers. 5 divided in 10. Each one got half a shekel. That's what they got. So Yosef Tzaddik went for a cup of coffee, 5 shekels. That's what they sold him for. But nevertheless, why again the Machatzit shekel? Why is that atoning for Yosef? Yosef was sold for 5 shekels. 10 brothers were when they sold him. each one got half a shekel. That's the calculation. Now, what is that going to do with me again? And what is that going to do with Parashat Mishpatim, and how is that connected to Adar? Now, usually, if we don't have a leap year, Parashat Mishpatim will be read right before the month of Adar. Next, this Shabbat, we're going to commemorate, I don't know if you actually say commemorate, but we're mentioning the Rosh Chodesh of Adar. This year is Adar Aleph. If it wouldn't be a leap year, then like I said, we would take out another Sefer Torah. But nevertheless, Parashat Mishpatim always will be read before Adar, before Purim. Why specifically before Purim we do that? Why is Mishpatim always before Purim? And why we read the Machatzit Shekel before Purim? What is that to do with it? So we know, I mean, this is around the corner. We're going to start learning about Purim next week. Purim is in a month and a half. Haman HaRasha, he paid a certain amount of money, a bribe to Achashverosh. He paid him 10,000. It's called Kikar Kesef. We'll call it in simple words for us to understand. He paid him 10,000 in the currency of silver. That's what Haman had to pay Achashverosh. He had money. He says, I want to kill this nation. Achashverosh says, you think everything goes here for free in this country? Give me money. I'll give you permission. No problem. Haman says, I have no problem. And he gave him 10,000 kikar kesef. Now, kesef is silver, kikar is the measurement of it, and he paid him 10,000 of it. That's a lot, by the way. It was a very large amount. Why specifically 10,000 eser elef kikar kesef? He made a calculation that we are counted as the roots of our souls. And how many souls in the Jewish nation we have? 600,000. 600,000 souls, that we are all branches of these souls. But the calculation of the 10,000 kikar kesef, the measurement of the currency of what Haman paid, is 600,000 half shekels. So 600,000 half shekels divided in half, that would be the value of what Haman paid in silver to Achashverosh. That's how he made a calculation. Now, Haman came to the king and he started saying, why are you investing in this nation? Don't you know that this nation is a corrupt nation? Why are you even letting them, why you let them live in your countries? This is a corrupt nation. You know their history? If you go into their history, you'll see that their forefathers sold a brother. That's not a nation that you want around you. Why are you even giving them a time of day? So, how did Haman wanted to, so to say, pay us back? He wanted to bring us back to the state of separation. Like the tribes, the sons of Yaakov, they were separated from Yosef. Haman wanted to cause the same thing. He wanted to cause a separation. So what do? In order to cancel it, then we give half a shekel, and we do a rectification, first of all, for the sin of selling Yosef, another rectification because there was a division between the brothers to bring back unity, and also to break the power of Haman. So up until today, we still do the custom, the ritual of Machatzit shekel. But nevertheless, when we read in this Parashat Shkalim, and again, this year we're not going to have it in this parasha, we're going to have it in a month from now. But nevertheless, when we read the Parashat Shkalim, have in mind in it, in a month when we're doing it, this is to atone and to do a rectification for the selling of Yosef. Up until today, we're paying for the debt. Okay. Now, again, so we understood that Haman bought the right to kill us for 10,000 kikar kesef. The Talmud says in Tractate Megillah, this can be found in page 13. If you ever learned from the Talmud, or if you maybe just open it to see how it looks, the Gemara, the Talmud is in the middle, and on the right side, or on the left side, depending on the page you're looking, there's going to be the commentary of Rashi, and on the other side, there's another commentary called Tosfot. These are the grandkids of, most of them are the grandkids of Rashi. And they're questioning the questions, and they're making a whole mishmash there to try to get the accurate details out. And nevertheless, half the question that the Tosfot suppose that we don't have answers for. Nevertheless, the Tosfot, it's called Tosfot. Tosfot is an addition. The Tosfot says in Tractate Megillah, page 13, it says there that this 10,000 kikar kesef is the value of half a shekel for each and one of everyone from the nation of Israel. That's what the Tosfot says there. That Haman knew, taking the amount of the quantities of the nation of the Jew, each one is worth half a shekel. That brought him to the value of 10,000 kikar kesef. Whatever the currency it was then, it was the value of the silver. Okay, that's what the Talmud says. But if you are aware, there are two versions of the Talmud. There's the Talmud that is called the Bavli. It was written in Bavel, in Babylon. And there's the Yerushalmi, the sages that lived in Eretz Israel. It's a different type. The Yerushalmi Talmud asks a question: why would Haman care how much it costs? Just give a little bit of money to Achashverosh and finish with it. Why would Haman be so particular about the value? And specifically, every Jew is half a shekel, brings him to the value of the 10,000 kikar kesef. We know, we're going to read the Megillah very soon, and we know based on the Midrash that every time that it says the word Hamelech or Melech, it's referring to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. If it says Hamelech Achashverosh, it's going on Achashverosh. Needless to say, the Megillat Esther is full of mysticism and gems and hidden secrets, and what we know on the surface is just a story. When you dig deep down inside into the Megillah, you find unbelievable mysticism and secrets. So, the Talmud says that Haman was not talking to Achashverosh. The Haman was talking to Hashem. When he was negotiating this deal that we know, it was not between Haman and Achashverosh, rather between Haman and the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Haman says, let me deal with them. I want to deal with them. Let me finish them. Nevertheless, Haman wanted to show them that their destiny is that they're only half. Through the message came across that he wanted to show to them, you're only half. You're not a complete. You're not whole. And what is that teaching us? The brothers of Yosef, when they got rid of him, they thought they finished with it. They thought they got rid of it. They didn't like him. They were jealous. He was like a thorn in their eye. They sold him and they thought, that's it. We're done with this problem. They didn't realize when they did that after 22 years, they depended on him. The wheels turned, or how you say, the tables turned, and 22 years passed. 22 years they didn't remember him. Who cares? We had that brother, we got rid of him. They thought they got rid of him. But Hashem twisted the reality, and now it came to a point that they depend on Yosef. Not only that they depend on him, first of all, he remembered the game, he played the game that he's going to put them in jail and so forth. But even after that, when he revealed himself, they were in the mercy of Yosef for many, many years. He supported them. And not only that, they were so scared that Yosef is going to say something to the father. They didn't even know how to digest it. They were so lucky that Yosef is a mensch. I told you at the time when we were reading these parashot, I told you that the whole time, 17 years, that Yosef was around Yaakov, he was barely around with him. He barely spoke to him. He did not want to get into a situation that Yaakov would ask him, what really happened then? Yosef avoided his father for all these years. And every time that he would be with his father, there would be other people. Because Yosef did not want to say anything bad about the brothers, because he knew that once he's by himself with Yaakov, Yaakov would tell him, tell me, my dear son, what really happened 17 years ago? It was actually 22 years ago. What really happened there? Yosef did not want to get to this point, so he avoided his father for 17 years. But nevertheless, the message that this is trying to tell us that Don't spit to the well where you drink from, because Hashem always turns the tables. And the person that you are putting down now, you're going to need that person at some point. And the brothers thought they got rid of Yosef. Oh, Habibi, not only that you didn't get rid of him, you created yourself a bigger problem. That 22 years later, smack into your face, that you needed the actual person that you threw into a pit and you sold as a slave. So Haman, the message came through Haman, but the Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted for us to understand, you are a half. Not because Hashem is my other half. You are my other half. You are my other half. We're all each other's half. Don't go against anybody now, because you don't know when you're going to need that person. Now you think you're mistreating somebody, you're using somebody, you're slandering somebody. Don't be so sure you're getting rid of that person. You never know when down the line you're going to need that person, and you're going to be to the mercy of that person. So the Torah is coming to teach me such a deep and profound message. Don't have any superiority to anybody. Here it's talking about the master and the slave. The role of the master of the slave. Oh, I'm the master now. I'm going to treat you like a slave. No, don't do that. Because one day the roles will switch. You're going to be the slave. He will be the master. So of course it has nothing to do with me. We don't have masters and slaves right now. The Torah is coming to tell me, open your eyes a little bit wider. Look inside what the Torah is trying to tell you. Don't ever feel that you are superior to somebody else. Don't use other people. Don't mistreat other people. You know why? Because the history tells us the tables will turn, and one day you're going to be to the mercy of that person. So this is one beautiful explanation. Like I told you, the Torah is coming to teach the master. Now, up until now, that was the message the Torah wants to teach the master. And at some point, we're all masters. The way it works in this world, one time you're up, you are the master. One time you're down, you are the slave. Okay, so up until now, we had a beautiful idea what the Torah is trying to teach me. And now we got the idea what the Torah is teaching the master. Now let's see what the Torah is teaching the slave. Now, there was a certain individual, lived about, don't catch me on the years, give or take about 150 years ago, maybe less. And again, don't take me on the years. A certain individual known as Moshe Montefiore. I'm sure you heard of him, Montefiore, maybe I'm pronouncing the word the wrong way. Nevertheless, very rich individual who did just good with his money. Unbelievable kindness what he did. How many prisoners he released. How much money he invested in charity and gave. He was extremely, extremely wealthy, but he only did kindness with his money. Now, how did he become rich? If you know his story, he was a broker. He lived in the UK. He was a broker, and at the time, in that period, only 12 Jews were allowed to deal in the stock market. Even then they had a stock market. Nevertheless, this was the stock market in London, only 12 Jews were allowed to be dealers there. And he was a broker in the stock market in London. He had a rule that Friday afternoon, 2:00 p.m., doesn't matter what happens, he's out. He's getting ready for Shabbat. Business is shut down. He doesn't care who's trading what, and in the stocks, you have to be with the hand on the pulse. Sometimes a minute difference, you can lose fortune. He had what we say in Hebrew, Chok Barzel, a law of iron. Doesn't matter what happens. 2 p.m., he's out, business is down. Okay, and he would get ready for Shabbat. Shabbat for him would be the highlight of the highlights. Okay, one Shabbat, he's sitting in his home, kids around the table, some guests, beautiful meal. They hear a knock on the door. He's thinking to himself, who would knock on the door now? The guests are already here, the family's here. Who would knock on the door? Okay. They send somebody to open the door, and he sees a messenger. Stands there a messenger and says to him, the boss, the one who gives you all the business, they called him the boss, he has a letter for you. A letter for me? You know I'm not going to open a letter on Shabbat. No, 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 no. The boss says, you have to open this letter. It's an emergency. He tells him, is this has to do something with the business? Because if it has something to do with the business, I'm not opening it. Yes, it has to do with the business. He says, is this life-threatening? Is this pikuach nefesh? No, it has to do with the business. Sarah tells him, I'm sorry to tell you, if the letter is about the business, I'm not opening it. Tells him, listen, the boss said that if you don't open the letter, he's cutting all ties with you. You're not going to have any business. He's going to completely destroy you. He will take you to the ground. You open the letter. But if you told him, you know what? You know my rule. I will not open the letter on Shabbat if it has anything to do with the business. They're going backwards and forth for a minute or two or half a minute or whatever it was. And Montefiore is standing on his ground. He says, if the letter has nothing to do with the business, I'm not opening it. Send it back to the boss. Tell him I don't care. And that's it. And this was a pretty big risk. He sends the messenger off, closed the door, and in his mind he says, Hashem, you are the master of the universe. You are the one who gives. You are the one who takes. I'm totally in your mercy. I'm totally counting on you. Shabbat passes. Comes Motzei Shabbat. He goes to see the boss. And as he opens the door, the boss hugs him, kisses him, and tells him, oh, thank you so much. Because of you, I made a lot of money. He says, what are you talking about? He says, well, last night, Friday night, I had some business colleagues here. And I was telling them about you. And they said, what? There's no such a thing that a person doesn't have a price. Jew, non-Jew, everybody has a price. And he says, no, I'm telling you, he's cement. You're not going to move him. And we made a bet. I said that no price in the world will break you. And they said, everybody has a price. And we made a bet. And you know what? I won the bet. And I made a lot of money because of you. So thank you for not opening the letter. So, it's funny because when you go into business, they say everybody has a price. But, you know, to some things, people say, no, there's no price for certain things. And you see it in certain individual, they say, for everything I have a price. When it comes to a Shabbat or a mitzvah, no, there's no price for that. Our whole life is a struggle, or I will say a war, a struggle on energy. Everybody needs energy. I need energy to work. I need energy to live. And a lot of our energy goes to just finding a quiet moment. Sometimes you're in a rush the whole day. All you want is 5 minutes. Let me just 5 minutes quiet. Sometimes I come home, 6 kids jump on me, this, pulling me here, this, phone calls there, just give me 5 minutes. I just need 5 minutes to the brain to relax a little bit. And this is most people. You're busy with your work, you're busy with your kids, you're busy with 1,000,001 errands that you need to do. Our life is constantly like a race, a struggle. And you need a lot of energy in this world. Most people, they wake up in the morning, it's not even 10 o'clock in the morning, already like a dead flower. So life is a struggle of energy. And what does really a slave do? Let's take now the story, the biblical story. What does the slave do? He subdues himself to another person. He becomes now the slave to another person. Now, there's nothing more contradicting in Judaism than this. I mean, Judaism is valuing your time. If you're looking at all the rituals, all the laws, all the mitzvot that we do, it's all about time. And Judaism is about valuing your time. And me giving myself over to be a slave to somebody else is completely contradicting all the basic idea of Judaism. Judaism is telling you in many different ways you have to value your time. Everything is time bound. How they say time is money. If your time is the most valuable thing you have, not your money, not anything, it's your time. Now, in the text, he's called the Eved Ivri. You know why he's called an Eved Ivri and not an Eved Israeli? It would make sense to call him a Israeli slave, not a Hebrew slave. The text called him Eved Ivri because he says if you are a slave, you're still stuck in Mitzrayim. You never went out of Mitzrayim. If you are still in the mentality of a slave, that you are willing to give your freedom and your time to somebody else, I'm sorry to tell you, you are still stuck in Mitzrayim. You never went out of Mitzrayim. You never got the Torah. You are not Bnei Israel. You're not Israeli. You are Ivri. So the Torah calls him a Ivri, not Israeli. In our generation, we went out of Mitzrayim 3,400 years ago. But in our generation, 99.9% of people in this planet are slaves to something. Today, it's very popular to be a slave to your WhatsApp. How many times a day you check your WhatsApp? 500 times? And this is one out of many. I'm hooked now on the WhatsApp. You have a few other slaves. You have Facebook. You have many other places where you are slave to. But let's just focus on WhatsApp for a second. Everybody has WhatsApp. Now it's not even you don't. Wow, this is like a. So now it's even a term. WhatsApp me. Instead of call me or WhatsApp me. What do you mean WhatsApp me? But nevertheless, if you are a slave to WhatsApp, or you know WhatsApp, so you're a slave to Facebook, and you're a slave to your Gmail, whatever, it doesn't matter, you use your imagination. If you are a slave to one of these things, you are still in Mitzrayim. You're still stuck in Egypt. And, very, very interestingly, it says in the Talmud, in Tractate Kiddushin, that the tool that the master used called martzea. In English, I think it's called or I forgot the term. In Hebrew, it's called martzea. It's like a very pointy, sharp tool that you poke the ear, you pierce the ear with it. Now, the act is very degrading. Now it's nice. It's like a jewelry to walk with an earring. Once it was if you would walk with an earring. I was trying to explain it to somebody who didn't understand what I'm trying to say. 60, 70, 80 years ago, to have a tattoo was a very bad thing. Now everybody has tattoos. 60 years ago, somebody had a tattoo, he was probably an ex-con or a sailor or something like a very low life. Who would have tattoos? A prisoner. So same thing with the earring. Somebody would walk with an earring. What are you, an earring? It's like a gang member or something as bad as that. That you look at it, I'm never going to associate myself with you. Interestingly, the tool that made the hold is called martzea. The numerical value of the word martzea is 400. We were supposed to be in Egypt for 400 years. We were only there for 210 years. So the tool that pierces the ear is saying, if you are still stuck in Egypt, we went out of Egypt after 210 years. You're still stuck there. You're still in the 400 years. And you're still stuck in Mitzrayim. And it means that you are continuing your slavery. What we want to take from that is that I need to control my time. I can't have the time control me. I'm sure most of you, now it's dangerous to say all of you, you just said you don't have WhatsApp, but I'm sure the majority of you have a Facebook account. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Sometimes you say, I'm just going to go in and check my status. My status. Like, what do you mean my status? Today I'm a millionaire. That's your status. But nevertheless, I'm going to check my status, and then you out after 3.5 hours. I don't know how people don't have problems with their knuckles, with a finger. Yeah. If you would look 10 years down the line, I'm sure people will be like this. Chas v'shalom. But nevertheless, the finger syndrome. But people go into Facebook, and then they're stuck there for 3 hours. Then instead of you controlling your time, the time is controlling you. And this is just Facebook. Some people, they walk with a smartphone, they're unemployed, they don't have a job, They don't have anything going in their life, but they have a smartphone and they're checking it all the time. What are you checking there? You're checking your stock market? So all these things, and not that I have anything against it, it can be used for a very powerful thing, but all these gadgets, they control your time. If this thing is controlling you, then you are a slave. You have to control time, not time controlling you. You have to control yourself and around you, and you can't have things controlling you. If things control you, things like WhatsApp or Facebook or all the rest of the junk, then I'm sorry to tell you, you are a slave. This is slavery. What's interesting here, that it says 6th year the slave has to work, and on the 7th year he goes free. Where do we see something that seems like a common denominator? That 6 days I have to work. I have to work. I have to use the smartphone. I have to answer emails. I have to answer my WhatsApp. I have to do this and that. But Shabbat, you don't need your phone on Shabbat. You don't check your status on Shabbat. You don't know all these things on Shabbat. So if you must work throughout the week with all these things, then at least Shabbat, you shut everything down. So the point to take from that is that I cannot be a slave to anything in this world. I have to be aware of what is controlling my time. I have 24 hours in the day. Some people sleep 8 hours, some people sleep 10 hours, some people sleep 3 hours. But nevertheless, I have to divide my day. 2 hours is praying. 2 hours is learning. 2 hours is eating, bathing, whatever. But the time has to be calculated. If your time is not utilized the right way, and you find yourself that you're wasting your time on nonsense, then you have the title of a slave. And you know how the Torah calls it? Eved Ivri. You are not only a slave, you are still stuck in Mitzrayim. I'm not going to even call you an Israeli. I'm going to call you a Ivri. You are so stuck back in Mitzrayim that you don't even get the title of an Israeli. And this is what the Torah comes and teaches you. 3,400 years after we go out of Mitzrayim, you better check yourself. Instead of checking your status on Facebook, why don't you check your status every day if you are a Ben Chorin, if you are a free person, or if you are still a slave. And if you find at the end of the day that you are still a slave because you were going like this 2 hours on Facebook, or you're going like this for 2 hours, sorry to tell you, you didn't go out of Mitzrayim yet. So the Kadosh Baruch Hu took this parasha and he attached it to Matan Torah to teach you, if you are still in the status of a slave, look how funny it is that even the term in our generation, like, I need to check my status. Well, your status is either you're a slave or either not. So the Kadosh Baruch Hu did us a favor and he took the parasha and he attached it to Matan Torah and he attached it to let us remember, you just left Mitzrayim. And if you are still not in control of your time, then I'm sorry to tell you, you didn't leave Mitzrayim, you're still a slave. You're still stuck in Mitzrayim. So what we want to take from that, many things, but we live in a very, very auspicious time, because Mashiach is coming any second, but nevertheless there's a lot of distractions. I told you already so many times that Paro, the king of Mitzrayim, even though we left out of Mitzrayim, but Paro is still there. And Paro, the letters Paro, if you switch the order around, it brings you to the word in Hebrew, hafra'ah. Hafra'ah is something that takes you out of your concentration. Hafra'ah is a disturbance or anything that will take you off your focus. And Paro is in our life all the time. And he makes me distracted. The real word of hafra'ah is distraction. Now you have to look how many distractions you have in your life. You know that they made a research and they found that most people, their attention span is 7 minutes. 7 minutes. That's what people are able to focus on for 7 minutes. That's why you notice that a good speaker, he knows how to break the class a lot. Hear a joke, hear something too, because well, I wake up and then okay, let me get back. I look at people, I mean you look at this. I look here. I see the heads and the... So we have a very short attention span. So this is Paro. Paro comes and it does a lot of distractions. And in our generation, didn't have it 50 years ago. In our generation, every 3 seconds you have a distraction. Ding, 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 dong, ding, 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 this, ding, this. How many distractions you have? If you have a Facebook account, and a Twitter account, and a LinkedIn account, and a WhatsApp, and a Gmail, and all this, you know how many distractions you have? How many times? Try to look how many times. People always get upset at me. I sent you an email, you didn't answer me. When did you send it? 2 hours ago. 2 hours. Say thank you if I'll answer you after 3 days. I'll check my emails every 3 days. I need to check it every day. What about you? Is there missiles coming? If you need me, you know where I live. You can call me. You think I'm going to check my message every day? Everybody gets upset at me. I text you. Okay. So when I get the chance, I'll go through my text messages. So, to make a long story short, Paro is the power of disturbance. It's all these distractions. And again, because Paro in Hebrew is Pei, Reish, Ayin, Hey, switch the letters is Hafra'a. Hafra'a is distraction. So if I'm being distracted, you know, when I go and pray, I turn my phone off. I don't understand it how sometimes I see the men on the phone while you're praying. Hello? You're in the middle of praying. You know, you're not allowed to talk when you have tefillin on your head. So people go like this. Well, what's the difference? What's the difference if you go like this or if you go like this? I go to a class or a meeting, I turn the phone off. I remove distractions. You know when I'm the most productive? My wife always tells me, why are you up all night? She says, I'm the most productive at night. No phone calls, no knocks on the doors, no nothing. No kids jumping anywhere. It's just me and what I need to do. So 11 o'clock at night to 3 o'clock in the morning, these 4 hours, I'm productive like 20 hours. So the point we want to take from that is the hint that the Torah is giving me, is that if I'm controlled by the distractions, I'm still in Mitzrayim, I'm still under the control of Paro, I'm still a slave, and I'm not a regular slave, I'm an Eved Ivri. I'm still back in Mitzrayim, I'm light years away from where I'm supposed to be. And if I want to be out of the mentality of a slave, then I cannot be controlled by distractions, and I cannot have time controlling me. I need to be control of my time. Sometimes I send, it doesn't matter, I'm not going to mention names, an assistant or a secretary or somebody, send them on errands, 5 hours back. Where were you for 5 hours? What took you 5 hours? Okay, it takes you 10 minutes to get there, 10 minutes in line. 5 hours it took you? Well, you know, I met him on the way, I met this on the way, this on the... You know, you want to be efficient in this world. Every moment counts here. So we want to take this profound message and to apply it in our life. And the same way you're checking your status on Facebook 17 times a minute, then check your status in this world if you are still a slave or if you are a free individual. And if your status is blinking as Eved Ivri, the situation is bad. Learn how to move away these distractions. Wherever you go, if the phone is a distraction, put it away. If your email is a distraction, make yourself a rule. You're checking your emails twice a day, once a day. Nothing is so important. I know people that they go to the same website, whether it's a news website, they go into the website 3 times an hour. Don't worry, if missiles will be on the way, you'll hear the alarm. You don't have to worry. Check the Chas v'Shalom. I check the news once a day. You don't have to check it every 2 minutes. So the point to take from that is to value your time. If your time is controlled by others and you are still in the status of a slave, and you want to be in a status that you are controlling time and not the time is controlling you.